Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the CPC Speaks Podcast. We have a great guest here, Megan Reeves from Recovery Centers of America. Megan and I met, the roles I play at CPC is coordinating with other agencies who do work similar to us. And Recovery Centers of America is another addiction treatment agency. They have, I'll let you explain a little more about that. But we have clients go back and forth and whatnot. So we work together. And in my meeting Megan, we hit it off right away, personality-wise. Seem to get along really well. It's been a pleasure working with you. But I learned you have a very unique history with CPC that you're graciously willing to share here. So that's which I very much appreciate. So let me introduce everyone to Megan Reeves of RCA. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how how your path to get to the point where you and I got to meet as now colleagues working together in the field.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I love working with you, and CPC is a very special place to me, and I will explain how they entered my life. A little bit of history about me. I always joke and say I'm from the mean streets of Middletown. It's like the ultimate suburbs. I grew up in a family, a beautiful home, 3 redheaded kids. From the outside looking in, it was a dream. My house was the cool house to grow up in. It was the party house. My parents created an environment where they could have their kids at home, but we also all drank together. So I had my first drink at 9 years old, which as a mom, I got clean. I entered recovery when my son was 5. And when he turned 9, I was in recovery, and I was like, I can't even imagine pouring him a cocktail, tough week of 3rd grade, but it was the culture, and it didn't seem abnormal, and it didn't seem out of place. And I thought I was really lucky, but there's always 2 sides to it, right? So my parents were very successful, and unfortunately they had untreated substance use as well, so we had it was the flip side, right? I had this great family dynamic and this fun house and all these things, but then there was a really, really toxic side to it too.
The story always starts out fun,
Yeah. So there was a really, really toxic side to it that I kind of lost my ability to have a voice from a very early age. I was never good enough. My mom wanted a daughter so bad, but she wasn't 100% sure I fit the mold of what she wanted. My brothers were all-star athletes. I never really got into anything. From a very early age, I never had that, I want to be this when I grow up. It just wasn't in me. And I think I had a lot of underlying mental health, and there was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of verbal, physical stuff. And I felt a lot of times that I got the brunt of it. And so as I got older, when substances came into play, I was always drinking from a very early age, but when I found my substances, it was the answer, right? So and I was not working towards any goals because I didn't have any. So I just was coasting forever. And my parents had a lot of money, and I didn't need for anything. I didn't want for anything. I just wanted to get high and not worry about what was coming next. And that was kind of the MO for my life. But I was very good. I was taught early on, you always put a smile on, you always show up, always show your best self, right? So I was dying inside, and I didn't know how to tell. Whenever I tried to voice it to my family, they called me dramatic. So there would be on a Saturday night, there'd be a huge explosive fighting, knockdown brawls in my house, and everybody would wake up Sunday and nothing happened. Everything was right under the rug. So I learned from an early age to just stuff. So I would be great with my friends, and then I'd just be dying inside, right? So substances became a huge part of my life. I found cocaine in my early 20s, and that was the answer to all my problems, weight problems, being able to communicate, all that stuff. It destroyed me, for many years, but I always slid under the radar. Nobody ever, because my family didn't talk about anything and everything got slid under the rug, nobody ever called me on it. Bank accounts were going low, but my brother was using simultaneously. My other brother had a problem. So it was just all this chaos. So my parents have 3 kids, and all 3 of us struggled with substance. When I was 17 years old, I remember saying to my brother, who was hooked on pain meds, and he was just a mess. And I was he's 5 years older than me. And I was just why can't you just stop, dude? Just stop. Like, mind you,
if it was only that easy, right?
if it was only that I was walking right in his footsteps. I was following his exact direction, right? So at some point, I got pregnant. I was with my son's father. We were in a relationship. I was living this like side life of being a massive cocaine addict. And I got pregnant with my son. And I was like, oh, thank God. Here's the answer to my problems, but I was so unprepared. And I was so young. I was like 24, 25, I think, when he was born. And I did it. And I had my son, and I thought that was the answer, but it wasn't, because I hadn't resolved anything. I hadn't worked on anything. So I started using again, but then I added opiates, and that was my 20s. My 20s was a series of just using, trying to hide it, trying to get away with it, and a lot of stumbling, but I never really had any massive consequences other than internally, emotionally falling apart, right? And but I had gotten really, really out of control around the time my son was like 3. And my family was like, you got to go away. Like, for my family to say, you got to go away, it's got to be pretty bad. And my ex-husband, my mom thought, she can get married, So I got married, and I didn't want to, but I didn't have a voice to advocate.
Right.
So I just kept kind of going through the motions and doing what I was told. And it got real, real bad. And I went to treatment, and it was like summer camp. I had the time of my life. I loved it, but I didn't do any work. I didn't talk about what was really going on. I didn't talk about how I didn't know how to express what I was feeling. So I lasted after treatment. As soon as I got out of treatment, I said I wanted a divorce. I didn't want to be married anymore. I knew that was the wrong move. And I just started. I didn't really go to meetings. I went here and there. I didn't do what was suggested. I got into a rehab romance with, all the brilliant ideas. So long story short, I lasted about 90 days, and then I went back to opiates hard. But I was trying to manage it this time. I was going to use a little differently, and I was going to go to meetings. I found key tags since I've been in recovery from when I was during that time that I did not remember getting at meetings. So
like a double life, so to speak.
Exactly. But I was showing up, right? So I was
Right.
going to these meetings, and I was getting the information, and I heard jails, institutions, and death, and I heard about all the consequences. When I first started going to meetings, I was like, oh, these poor people. Like, I was different.
Gotcha.
And within that 2 years, everything that I saw in meetings started happening to me. DIFA started getting involved, or DCP&P now. The walls were closing in, right? But I didn't even, in my head, I was so sick, I didn't even really think I was using. I don't know, I was out of my mind. So one sunny day in 2009, I was driving my son to camp. It was actually 13 years ago this month.
Wow.
I was driving to my son to camp, and I pulled over after I dropped him off. I was going to COP, and I just said, God, just please let this end. Please, like, whatever I have to do, like, I just can't live like this anymore. I was so sick all the time. I didn't have the money and the means anymore.
It's a lot of work.
It's
keeping that life
work.
going.
I was so exhausted, but I didn't know how to stop, and I didn't really see that as a possibility. So I begged God, and and I got pulled over, and I got arrested when I was copping with the dealer, and handcuffed and taken to jail, and the whole 9 yards, and nobody was coming to get me. And my son was at camp, and I couldn't it was just,
Man. Wow.
it was a nightmare. And, I just said DCP&P was closing in. I thought I was slick, giving them prescriptions and all kinds of stuff, getting by. But when your name ends up in the paper, they see it. So I spent a week in jail, and I told God, and I said, never again. I'm done. I'm finally done. Right. And I remembered everything that I'd heard in meetings for 2 years.
So it was sinking in. It just had to take root.
It was all coming in. But let me tell you something. When I got out of jail, the cops had missed something in my bag, and I got high in the parking lot when I got out. That was the hold that this disease has on me if I'm active, and I recognized it. So the next day I used for another couple of weeks while I was trying to get into detox. I had no insurance or anything. But everything started resonating. I can't even afford to get my son sneakers if he needs sneakers. My parents can't do this forever. So DCP&P got me involved with CPC. And I went to detox, and I made the decision when I left detox that when I was in detox, I'm not looking back. Like, this is it, because I had enough recognition that every time I picked up, things got worse. Like if I knew nothing else. And I knew I wasn't one of those people that would go to meetings and say, oh, they must all still be using. Like I knew they were not using, and I knew that they seemed like they were happy and content. Like I never was looking for a dream. I was just looking to not be miserable in my own skin, and to have some self-acceptance, and self-worth. So I went to CPC and met the beautiful and wonderful Linda Lanny, who literally I owe my life to, because I went in there. I always joke that when I went to detox, it was like an action film, like when they light the match and throw it behind explosions. Everything was gone. My car was repoed. I was homeless. I went through all the stuff when I was using. It wasn't easy those last 2 years. I struggled like I had heard everybody else struggling in the rooms. So I had to start from scratch. And like, I went to court with 20, at this point, my son had been removed from the home, rightfully so. And I went to court with 22 days clean, all cocky, like, and Linda's like, it should be okay, but you have to be prepared, like, just in case. And I went in and I was like, I have 22 days clean and I'm going to meetings and I had all these letters and stuff. And they were like, exactly. You have 22 days clean, like, go find some recovery and then you will get custody back when we feel you're ready. And I was devastated, but I went into that courtroom all resentful of the whole system. When the judge said that, it was the first time I had a hard look at like accountability, like, oh wait, nobody's doing this to me. I did this. They told me this is what would happen.
Right.
And I ignored it and I kept going and I kept doing it. And like, I got the result that exactly what they said would happen. So I started, my thinking really started to shift as a result of that. I can look back on my first year of recovery actually and see how everything fell to pieces, fell in like perfect puzzle pieces. Like things didn't always go my way, but they went as they were supposed to in order for me to learn, right? So I continued going to meetings. I went every single day. I went to CPC, and I was literally only going on the fact that people like you, Linda, the people in the rooms kept telling me, like, if you continue to do the right thing, the right thing's going to happen. And I was like, okay, can you give me a date as to when things are getting better? Because it's still a mess. But slowly but surely, things started to get better and I started to get some direction. And I made a lot of mistakes and I made, but from each one, at least I learned. I didn't repeat the same mistakes a lot. I didn't live in that insanity as much as I had in the past. So I started working in the field of substance use in 2011. Mr. Will Wilder gave me a job at New Hope Foundation, and my life was forever changed. Like I had direction. I every time I would have a job, even early recovery, I sold vacuums. I did everything, trying to make ends meet. And like, I just was miserable. Like it wasn't anything that was fulfilling my spirit, or I didn't feel like I was kind of just like paying my dues. So when I entered the field, it was the first time I connected with something that I was passionate about. Like I don't know much, but I know how to stay clean and I know how these principles work and how to better myself. So if I could give that to someone else, it made sense. I decided once my son came home when I had 6 months clean. But I decided when I had about 6 years clean, working in the field, doing what I had to do to go back to school. And that was a game changer. I started to further my education. I'm still furthering my education. And I've worked in a lot of the facilities in Monmouth County and ended up with Recovery Centers of America, where I work now, in a totally different role than I ever knew even existed. And I work as a treatment advocate and I help people get into treatment. And you're
good at it, because I deal with people all the time, and you're doing what you're doing. You're very, very on top of things and connect with people. It's amazing.
You know what it is, Ken? It's just that I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this because I worked within the facilities for so many years, 10 years, and I loved it, but I would always get phone calls from people in the rooms and people that knew I was in recovery from all over Monmouth County, all over the place. And they would ask for help to get people into treatment. And so I would have these resources. And so on my downtime, I did what I'm doing now. And the fact that I've been able to turn this into a career is just the greatest gift I've ever been given, you know, so I don't take 1 second of it for granted. I make sure that I'm ethical to a T, because that's who I am. I couldn't be any other way. And like, at the end of the day, every person that I interact with and I help get into treatment, they're connected to a family. They have kids, they have spouses, they have parents, you know, so I take my role very, very seriously. And yeah, that's, I mean, what they said. So I used to get really mad in early recovery. There's a saying in the rooms that's lost dreams awaken and new possibilities arise, right? And I hated it because I didn't have dreams. I didn't have any of that stuff. Like I just,
Right. You had said you had no goals for a long time.
I didn't want to be miserable. If you can call it a goal. I just didn't want to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, like I was for years, even clean. And like, now I get it. Now I get it. Like, I may not have known what I was working towards, but like right now I'm in a place, I have an incredible career. My wonderful son is off to the University of South Carolina in a couple of weeks. And I have been present and there for every one of his achievements, everything. He's a straight A student. He's well-versed on substance use disorder. And like they were right. You guys were all right. If you do the right thing will happen. So I know that I'm not in control of most things, so I can let go. And that's where the contentment and the freedom comes, is knowing like, all right, just put one foot in front of the other, be kind to people, be kind to yourself, and everything will be okay. And like, sometimes I need people like you to remind me of that. Spiraling, but on most days I get it pretty good. So
well, everybody needs it. It's you know, it's just, life is so hard.
Human condition.
Yeah, it's a grind for everyone to just stay on that, you know, to do the right thing and to stay on a good path. So yeah, to close it out with it's amazing. And like, if anybody could ever meet you and see, you're living proof of this, that it's such a difference maker when, you know, that the recovery process works. But just to close it out, let's say somebody was showing this in a group or something like that. What would you say? You know, you've been on the other side and you're on, you know, now you've really come full circle. What would be a couple of words of wisdom from your experience?
Words of wisdom? Hang on to your seat. So the truth is that everybody receives the message different. I was given the message 8,000 times and I wasn't ready to receive it. So a lot of times, one of the most important things I learned is there's only one spiritual principle that we can give to another person, and that's hope, right? So someone told me a long time ago that hope is an acronym for hold on, pain ends. And that I held on to with both hands, because I was in such a tremendous amount of pain. And like, even just talking to you, I just like could envision myself sitting in Linda's office being like, how is this ever going to get better? How? It doesn't seem possible that this could get better. Even if all the life stuff gets better, how is this going to get better? And this, like, it's never been okay. Not since I was a kid. So hold on, pain ends. Like, the hope is there. And like, if you have just like like for me, I always say like there's always a spark, right, of light at the end of that tunnel, that dark, dark place that we get ourselves into. And but that spark can grow and it can get bigger. And it's just about literally putting one foot in front of the other, trusting in the process, and like following suggestions. It's as simple as it gets, but we have a tendency to overcomplicate it. I did for years. So that's really it. That would be my best suggestion.
It's amazing. It's inspirational. And you're, again, like I said, you're proof, like, you know, just the way you conduct yourself and working with you and seeing you work, you know, you're living it, you're living everything you're saying. And it's amazing. And it's, I really, really appreciate you coming out here to, you know, coming on Zoom to do this. And I knew you would deliver. Awesome.
Oh,
awesome.
Thank you. Well, I'm just so grateful to be a part of like listen, I was born and raised in Monmouth County, and like to be able to be a part of the solution here and be involved, like part of my job is being able to work in all the organizations and be a part of a solution. So that's what I'm here for. Yeah, for sure.
Great purpose to be part of. Thanks, Megan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So good to see you.
You too. Take care.